Why is there so much challenging of authority out there about COVID-19? Find out today here on Jimmy Rants. Click on that little box down in the corner. It'll take you straight to IGTV so you can watch today's episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And as always, you got to go follow me over on Instagram if you want to join the show live. We go live Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So go check it out over on Instagram at Living Low Carb Man. LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, engage live, enjoy the show, and come engage live. We like to answer your questions as we're doing the show and interact with you. That's what makes this show fun, is getting to interact with you, the viewer. We also simulcast live over here on my Facebook page, so thank you all for being here. Appreciate you guys coming in. Anna and Jude just popping in to say hello and be here today on Jimmy Rants. Usually, I also have a third one over there for YouTube, but I woke up this morning, you guys, and on my iPhone 10 that I record the show on for YouTube, I have a long streak, and it's locked me out, basically, of my phone. So all you can see is that big streak and a little splotch, and I don't know what I did to it, so I'm going to have to go to the Apple Store and try to figure out why, but all my YouTube live stream is dead today because I have no other devices that I can do that. So that's why, Shirley, it didn't pop up on YouTube, is my phone that I usually record the live stream on has got like a big long streak on it. So anyway, that's why we have 3 different devices that all do this show. So in case technology fails, that's what we do. So if you missed the live, though, be sure to watch it on replay. It'll be replay right here on IGTV, so go check that out. Shortly after the show is over, we put it up on IGTV and it's ready to go. And then over on YouTube, you will still be able to see it on YouTube, just on replay. So we'll put that up shortly after the show is over. Usually it's about an hour or 2 after the show. That's up on YouTube. You can also listen today's episode of the Living La Vida Low Carb Show. We have a best of Jimmy Rants. So that's over there at llvlc.com. And then finally, we have a website for the show called Jimmy Rants. It's jimmyrants.com. And while you're there, you can see all the past episodes. And then if you like what you see here and you get value out of this, throw me some value back, and definitely hit that Patreon link and give us a donation of any amount. And that will certainly help us out. But guys, I want to talk about something here today that has become quite a controversial subject, especially here in the United States, because there seems to be this notion of connecting people wearing masks and people not wearing masks, and then making assumptions about those people. And I ran into this the other day. On Sunday, I made a meme that I posted all over the internet. I love making little memes. And I took a clip from my favorite movie, The Princess Bride. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Like, it's like one of my all-time favorite movies. It was a stupid, silly movie from the 80s, but wow, it stands up because I love that movie. And so in that movie, one of the main characters is this guy named Wesley. So he's wearing this mask around his eyes. And anyway, so he gets in a fight with Andre the Giant. And Andre the Giant asks the question, why are you wearing a mask? And so then he responds, well, masks are terribly comfortable, and in the future, I think everybody will be wearing them. So I wrote a little caption that said, see, even Wesley knew what was coming. That was all I wrote. And yet this lady here on Instagram, she railed into me so hard. She was like, oh, you must be a Trump-loving, no-mask-wearing, you're making people sick, you're distorting the truth about mask-wearing, and you're the most political person I've ever met in my life. And I mean, she just went on and on and on. I'm going, oh my gosh, how do you get that from me doing a meme from The Princess Bride? And it shows you guys how there's so many people that are jumping to conclusions based on one little thing that they think they see when it's not there at all. And there is this kind of conversation happening out there about what's scientific, What should be challenged about being what's scientific? Should you wear a mask? Should you not wear a mask? And then who has authority, and should I be challenging that authority? This is what's happening right now in our culture. And if we don't recognize that people are taking sides and people are trying to make this a black and white issue, that if you're not wearing a mask, you must be Trump loving, you must be anti-science, you must be blah, 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 blah. And if you're wearing a mask, you're the good person, you're the non-racist. Like they even put in the racial part of this. That's the funniest part. It has nothing to do with that at all. And you're a Joe Biden supporter. And it's just like, it's become this bigger than it really is kind of issue. And Shirley, you're right. Everybody is extremely high-strung today. And of course, I've talked about that on previous Jimmy Rants, that some of the being in lockdown, being away from human connections, it has really kind of robbed us of a lot of humanity lately, that people are just like wound up, ready to just go off. And I think it explains some of the ugliness that has happened out there, not just in the online world, but actually physically confrontations that are out there. It's just, it's a weird time for us to be living in. But I wanted to talk about here today this whole idea that there's an anti-science bias, and it was CNN. I read it in this story that featured Dr. Fauci and some things that he put out there in a podcast. He said there's a very decided anti-science bias in the country that he feels is problematic. One of the problems we have in the U.S. is that, unfortunately, there's a combination of an anti-science bias that people are, for reasons sometimes inconceivable and not understandable. They just don't believe science and they don't believe authority. And I thought this was a good launching point, because I feel like he's right. There is somewhat of a questioning of authority, and there's a questioning and a challenging of what authority is telling us, because authority has gone back and forth on this specific issue. Authority, in fact, it was Dr. Fauci himself that came out, and there's a video that goes around online. It's from March, and he was asked point blank, I think it was a 60 Minutes interview, should we be wearing masks? And he said, no, never, nobody should be wearing masks. It's ridiculous. It's just virtue signaling. You're just not really doing it. If it makes you feel better, put it on, but there's really no reason why anybody should be wearing a mask, blah, 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 blah. And then, like a month later, oh no, everybody should be wearing a mask. We know that it protects people. It may not be protecting you. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to protect other people, so you can't give them the virus if you're asymptomatic, da 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 da. So then you have this conflict that happens because you have authorities that are talking out of both sides of their mouth, and they're giving you both information on one end of things and information on the other end. And that's where this comes in. So for him to now say, well, there's anti-science bias, the reason is the science goes back and forth. And the Jimmy Rants I did yesterday talks about how science can be manipulated to say what you want it to say. And quite frankly, this pandemic kind of came on us all of a sudden. We didn't have time to do randomized controlled clinical trials about the efficacy of wearing masks, for example. Now, if it makes you feel better to wear a mask, then by all means, wear a mask. And I feel like the people that are having the biggest problem with this are the ones that feel like we've been lied to. And of course, here in the keto carnivore community, we're used to being skeptical. Like, think about the mindset it's taken us to get to the keto carnivore message. It's taken that we're no longer fearful of saturated fat. That's the common belief, though. Everybody has always believed saturated fat clogs your arteries, gives you heart disease. And so thus you cut your saturated fat and you improve your heart disease risk. That's what we believed. So we challenged authority on that one, and we were right. And we know that saturated fat is not this grand enemy in our health. So it's a natural parallel move to think, okay, well, they lied to us about saturated fat. What else are they lying to? So it's not that they're just purposely trying to take a contrarian position. It's that they've proven that they can lie in science. And so these people that are challenging science, that are being anti-science and having a bias towards that, it's for good reason. They've lied. And we know that, and we've talked about that many a times out there. And so There was this article in The Atlantic about the dudes who won't wear masks. And it talks about some of these issues where people are just refusing to wear masks. There was a baseball player in this story who was being shamed because people were saying he was threatening the lives of millions of innocent people, and that people are telling him just wear a damn mask. And so many people were calling him out, calling him a social disgrace, disrespecting his community, abdicating his civic duty, putting grandma at risk. The anger towards the mask naysayers is understandable, and shaming can feel like you're getting relief in the moment, yet those responses did nothing to persuade him. And this is what I'm seeing a lot right now. There's people that are like being shamed for not wearing a mask, and of course they have their reasons for not wearing a mask. And instead of trying to call people out, maybe figure out why they believe not wearing a mask isn't going to do any good. It could just be that they're only self-centered and they only care about their own well-being, and that everybody else be damned, I'm not going to wear one because I'm going to beat this thing. You know, there is kind of a machoism that goes along with not wearing a mask, and we have to acknowledge that as well. During a health crisis, some people quickly accommodate a major shift in behavioral norms, but long-standing habits, such as not wearing a mask when you go to the grocery store, is difficult to break. Until recently, few American adults have ever been called on to do this. Some have, though, and the parallels are instructive. Americans are figuring out how to deal with this new virus, and so they're wearing masks, and that's what they're doing. The public health messaging around masks during the coronavirus has been muddled and confusing, and this is a part of the story we don't need to forget. Dr. Fauci wonders why there's such anti-science bias. He wonders, why wouldn't you wear a mask? Well, it was he himself that said that mask wearing is ridiculous. He did it just back in March. Nobody needs to be wearing a mask. There's a very famous video, goes all over the internet from 60 Minutes. No, nobody needs to be wearing a mask, and now they're saying everybody needs to be wearing a mask. So the contradictory information, the muddled information can be confusing, and you bet your sweet bippy that's going to make people challenge authority. The federal government recommended against face coverings for the public in March. Some public health officials even said that they may even cause more harm than good, and I've seen a lot of these kind of videos out there. People talking about you're getting lower oxygen when you have a mask on. It's going to increase your risk of getting dizzy and having headaches and passing out and blah, 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 blah. We've heard all that. And so people hear that and go, well, I don't want that to happen to me, so they don't wear a mask. And so we're pretending like everybody that doesn't wear a mask is doing it out of defiance of science. And I think in the lack of any kind of clear message about masks versus not masks, whatever your position is on that, there hasn't been this clear understanding of the good, the bad, the ugly. We've just heard everything, and even the same people taking the opposite position, so it kind of gets confusing. A growing body of science, including evidence that people can transmit the virus when they don't have symptoms, indicates that masks are now an important tool for mitigating this coronavirus transmission, especially in combination with physical distancing, hand hygiene, and other preventative measures. Indeed, public health concerns may justify mask mandates in some settings, including indoor spaces where most people gather for extended periods of time. Mandates can have a major downside. Any enforcement is likely to disproportionately affect communities already marginalized, and they believe that requiring people to wear masks is an infringement on civil liberties. If Americans are going to mask up, public health officials will have to cajole, not compel. So this is the thing too, like a lot of the areas where they want to have masks wearing, they're running into like some of the social injustice type of like rallies. And this is another thing that's making people challenge the science of all this, is there seems to be a blind eye turn to the protests for the Black Lives Matter. And yet then when there is a political rally, they say, oh my gosh, that's going to spread the coronavirus. And so people are seeing that as well. Well, why is it spreading in this political rally and yet it's not spreading amongst the protesters? So people are seeing mixed messages from that. So this is all a part of this conversation about why people are challenging authority, why there is such an anti-mask versus mask movement, and we have to acknowledge these things. Trying to shame people into healthier behavior generally doesn't work, and it actually makes things a lot worse. Public health officials have learned this lesson before. Back in 1987, Congress banned the use of federal funds for HIV prevention campaigns that might promote or encourage directly or indirectly homosexual activity. As a result, public health campaigns avoided any kind of sex imagery and messaging, and instead associated condom use with virtue and condomless sex with irresponsibility, disease, and death. According to one poster which featured an image of a gravestone, a bad reputation isn't all you get from sleeping around. But it was these moralistic, fear-mongering health messages that often fell flat. Think about it now. Well, you need to save grandma. You need to put on a mask so you can save grandma. Okay, well, I mean, that feels like people are like, well, I'm not going anywhere near my grandma, so I don't need to wear a mask. Like, can you see where trying to shame people into doing this, and then the virtue signaling? Well, I'm wearing a mask, and so therefore I care about people, and you're not wearing a mask, therefore you are a prick and you don't care about people. So there's this kind of like judginess that comes along with mask versus no mask. And that's something they got to deal with, something they have to acknowledge and understand that that's a palpable argument in the minds of people that are choosing not to wear a mask. And again, if science shows that we should all be wearing a mask, show that science and show it clearly. If science shows that if you wear a mask, you kind of have health problems that come up, show that science clearly. This is what's happened. People have been left to their own devices about what to believe because nobody has presented any science that's compelling one way or the other. And it goes back and forth. And then you've got all these ancillary things of, well, if you don't wear a mask, you must be a Trump-loving, blah, 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 blah. If you wear a mask, you must be a Biden-loving, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, it's become this political thing when it shouldn't be political at all. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask. I don't think I know how you're voting in the November election whatsoever, and don't care, by the way. That's just, but people are equating those things. And they're challenging authority because there's such muddiness out there. Summoning up compassion for people who have a hard time wearing a mask, or even the people who flat out object to them, isn't such a tall order. Many Americans genuinely want to keep their communities safe, and they recognize that masks can help reduce the risk of coronavirus transmission. But just like the well-intended condom of the nightstand that never makes it out of the wrapper, some masks don't make it onto someone's face, often for relatable reasons. While ideologues who entirely eschew masks will be less persuadable, people who support the use of masks may find shared ground with them, lamenting the way that face coverings impede social interactions with the cashiers ringing up the groceries. The baseball player said, "The two ladies that were checking me out were wearing these masks. I love to make people like that smile and laugh and have a great conversation. You couldn't even see the wrinkles in their eyes. They look so beat down and run down." And I've run into this, you guys. When I've gone into grocery stores, I miss this. I miss getting a smile back. I miss humanity. Like, I feel like some of this has robbed us of our humanity. And I know I'm not alone in this. Like, do you guys feed off of the reaction and facial expressions of other people? Now, there's some people that are just fine keeping their head down. They don't look at anybody. You guys know me well enough. That's not me. I love looking at people. I make eye contact. I smile. I give like unspoken gestures and communication with people all the time because that's just my personality. I've had none of that over the past 3-4 months. None. And I'm going to be honest with you. It started to wear on me a little bit. And this is something that's also playing into this. Well, I have to see humans. I have to see and have human interaction, and facial expression is a part of that. And so this is a hard part of this whole conversation of, yes, we're trying to prevent the spread of the coronavirus, and I think that's something we should all care about. But we're also having another issue going on that we have to acknowledge, and that is we've lost a bit of our humanity in the midst of this. And it's one reason that I've struggled. And I'll be honest with you guys, there's some days I come on Jimmy Rants, and right before I come on, I'm on the verge of losing it, because this has been extremely hard. And if we fail to recognize how hard this has been mentally on people, wearing them down, making them question everything, it's real. And we have to bring this into the conversation. Americans are beat down and run down after months of loss and social isolation. Masks do keep people from seeing any kind of facial expression, hearing voices clearly. Both of these are vital elements of a social connection. Masks don't deprive people of oxygen, but they do make it harder to breathe freely. I can tell you, when I leave Costco, I'm ripping that mask off so fast it's not even funny, because I don't personally breathe very well with them on, but I wear them where I need to wear them. I usually stay in my house all day, so I'm not usually going out and about, and I don't wear a mask around my own house, but when I'm out and about wearing it, and so when I take it off, I'm like breathing in deeply. They fog up your glasses, they make your nose itch, your face sweat. Many masks feel decidedly uncool. They are yet another thing to remember to do when you walk out the door. Most of all, masks are a constant reminder of what Americans so desperately want to forget, that despite all the sacrifices we've made, this pandemic has not gone away. Empathy now has its own kind of power, though. Acknowledging what people dislike about a public health strategy enables a connection with them rather than alienating them further. This is the thing. When people start shaming someone for not wearing a mask, do you think you're changing their mind? Do you think you're going to convince them that they should suddenly put on a mask? I watched the other day, there was some old man in Florida, I think it was the Orlando, Florida area, was trying to go into a Walmart where they have implemented, mandatory mask wearing to get in the store. And I'm going in this store whether you want me to wear a mask or not. And so he tries to go in, and then poor employee, I feel for working in a retail store right now. This poor employee had to actually play bodyguard trying to keep this guy out. And so he actually falls down, the old man does. And he gets back up, and he's weaving and bobbing, and he gets into the aisle, and they basically have to tackle him. Meanwhile, everybody in the store is screaming at the guy, just put on a mask. All of us are wearing a mask. And so it's just become this really ugly kind of dog and pony show. And to what end is what I say. Like, why are we trying to bark at these people who are choosing not to wear a mask? Let's instead figure out, why do you believe that? Why are you going there in your mind, and acknowledge what they're going through and acknowledge the whys. When those barriers become understood, we can then address them. And right now, nobody's asking why you're not wearing a mask. It could be that you have a breathing problem and you're not allowed to wear a mask because you would die. You would actually die. And I wonder if there's a way we could give those people a card or something to carry around with them. See, I'll stay socially distanced. I'll stay physically distanced from you, but I have a card that tells me I can't wear a mask, so don't judge me. And I think that's also feeding into this, the judgingness that people not wearing a mask are just being anti-science or are being Trump supporting, whatever you want to call them. When it became clear that people needed better condoms, companies began making them in all different shapes, sizes, and colors to improve all the things that condoms do. Likewise, the government needs to support businesses in developing masks that are not only effective, but also fit well and feel well. People need a range of options, including face shields that can help meet their personal needs and preferences. And people need face coverings that make them feel like it's cool. And yes, even manly. And I talked about that earlier. A lot of guys aren't wearing masks because, that's sissifying me. And that's a real thing too. You can't deny, you can't just dismiss that. Well, just man up, put on a mask. Okay, that doesn't reach a guy that feels like he's being demasculated by wearing a mask. So give the boy a mask to wear that he feels like he's manly still. Yeah. When the public health community talks about harm reduction, we often talk of meeting people where they are. A fundamental part of that is, literally meeting people where they are. Just like the buckets of free condoms that they put in gay bars, masks need to be dispensed where they're needed the most: at the front of a bus, the entrance of an airport, grocery stores, and workplace. Masks should now become ubiquitous, but distribution should begin in areas where the coronavirus has hit the hardest, including in the Black and Latino neighborhoods. It says here, the black men who wear masks may be at heightened risk of violence. In one of the more grim illustrations of why combating racism is tied to public health. So that's another thing. Again, I mentioned it earlier, the Black Lives Matter protests, some of those people are not, physically distancing. And so is that causing a problem? Because not all of them are always wearing masks. And then you got political rallies, and again, same thing. And there's somewhat of a judgment of those two different scenarios, judging them differently. What matters most is that people choose to wear a mask when they are indoors or in close proximity to other people, and that choice needs to be rendered as effortlessly as possible. I was in a store yesterday where when you walk in, they had a big bucket of like fresh masks, and they said, grab one. Mask and gloves. If you wanted to put on gloves, you want to have masks, they had them right there for you when you walked in the store. I thought that was kind of cool. The decision of whether to wear a mask is a far more visible one than the decision of whether to wear a condom, making an individual's choice to go without an easy target for scorn. Yeah, nobody's walking around, you're not wearing a condom. Oh, I didn't want to see that. Whereas everybody can see this when you're walking around. And so if someone chooses not to wear a mask, I think we need to be having that discussion and trying to figure out, okay, are you trying to wear a mask just to virtue signal me to wear one? Or what? Like, you got to figure out the why. And the thing is, we're all jumping to assumptions. If you're wearing a mask and you're a non-mask wearer and you see someone wearing a mask, you might think, oh my gosh, look at those people. They fell for the lie. Oh my gosh. Like, I can't believe there's people that actually believe this is a real thing. Man, this is so fake. Oh my gosh. Like, come on, stop virtue signaling everybody. Go vote for Joe Biden in November. Then we know what you're doing. That's what they're jumping to. Or if you're not wearing a mask, oh my gosh, look at that irresponsible person. Doesn't even follow the science. Doesn't even understand he's putting everybody at risk. He must be going to be a Trump lover, because we all know Trump doesn't wear a mask anywhere. Oh my God. Oh, and so there's assumptions that way. And how we jumped to the conclusion of all of that simply because someone's wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. Basing it on science, not basing it on science. Challenging authority or obeying authority. Do you see how this becomes a very muddied issue? And unless we address what the real issue is, it's not mask wearing, it's not mask wearing. It comes back to this issue of authority. Do we believe the things that have been told to us? And for the people that don't believe, you can't blame them. Look at how mixed messaged it has been across the board since the very beginning of all this. I mean, it's been all over the place. And then they based us all getting locked down in our houses based on a model that showed 2 to 4 million people dying. And it's been nowhere near that. Unless you ask Joe Biden, he says 120 million people have died of COVID-19. I know he misspoke. Don't write to me. But that's the kind of thing that people see, that kind of thing, and they go, okay, well, they were wrong then. What makes them right now? And so we have to acknowledge that as well. Public health works best when it recognizes and supports people's needs and desires without any judgment. If Americans do this right, you might find that wearing a mask is the thing that makes everything better. Maybe. And so I had another story here, and I'm looking at the time, about challenging authority and why people hate authority. And it comes, let's see if there was anything in here I wanted to talk about. The main thing is we challenge authority, and we've been doing it our whole lives. Those of you that had parents that you didn't like what they said, so you always challenge them on things. I remember when I was in the 8th grade, and my mom was a single mom, I knew how to push her buttons and get her to do what I wanted to do. Yes, I was that kid, sorry. But it was almost not that I wanted something done. I just wanted to see how I could challenge authority and get away with it. And I remember there was some dance or something I wanted to go to with this girl. And I begged and begged and begged, and she said no, no, no. And I begged and begged and begged, and she said no, no, no. And finally I wore her down. And finally she said, okay, go to the stupid dance. And I'm like, no, I'm good. And she got so mad. But it wasn't that I wanted to go to the dance. It was that I was challenging the authority that she had over me. And I've since apologized to her, by the way, so don't think I've been a bad kid. But it was that moment in my life when I was like, okay, I don't really like authority. And there's people like that. And when you challenge authority, it's not that you're necessarily just trying to be bad for bad's sake. You're actually sometimes questioning things to the degree of just wanting to know more. And so in this article, this one's from afterpsychotherapy.com. It's a psychotherapist, and she talks about some of her clients. She said one client was a young therapist in training named Alan, used to challenge every intervention that I made. I'd listen carefully to his associations and tell him what I hear him saying, the unconscious communication he wasn't aware of making. He'd often respond by saying, well, why should I believe what you say? Just because you tell me so? How do I know that another interpretation isn't equally valid? He was an extremely intelligent man, always sounded very reasonable when he said these things. This was many years ago, and at the time I tried to talk to him about his reaction in terms of his neediness, that he didn't want to put himself in the position of being needy in therapy, and therefore questioned whether it had anything to offer him. In retrospect, though, I think I missed the boat. While he indeed had a difficult time with dependent relationships, he profoundly resented authority in any form whatsoever. He always knew better than his teachers and supervisors, and he certainly knew better than I did. He dropped out of the treatment within a few months, and today I would tell a client like Alan that he doesn't have to believe anything I say simply because I make the statement. He is the sole authority on his own experience and has to decide for himself whether my words shed any useful light. And this is applicable for us with the mask wearing versus the not mask wearing, understanding why people are challenging authority. We can get to this core, guys, without making it this ugly, ugly thing that it's become today. I think that was the only thing in this article I wanted to share. And then this other article is about the coronavirus skeptics and why we stick to deadly beliefs. People in positions of authority have a special duty to be careful with their words because we pay close attention to what they have to say. And I would say Dr. Fauci has this on him more than anybody. I wonder, had Dr. Fauci in March, had he not come out with that notion that we should not be wearing a mask, nobody should be wearing a mask in public. He said that very clearly, very publicly in March. Now, what happened between March and now that has made him totally change his tune altogether, that now everybody should be wearing a mask, which, by the way, I was watching a video yesterday of Dr. Fauci. He did a news conference on television, and as soon as he thought the cameras were off, he ripped that mask off so fast it wasn't even funny. It was almost like he was saying, okay, we're all wearing a mask, and so therefore you should be wearing a mask, America. And then as soon as it's over, he's ripping it off. And there's people all around him, and nobody real close to him. But the notion was, okay, I'm going to wear a mask for the camera, but not when it comes to the real world. And so people see images like that, and they go, okay, well, here's the guy telling us to wear a mask, and yet he himself can't wait to rip it off. And we have to pay attention to that as well. Their words, by the nature of their position and stature, are more likely to be adopted as beliefs by people at a larger scale than the words of everyone else. And I've been told that too. People are like, well, we need to be paying attention to the public health officials that understands this. And if they say to wear a mask, then therefore we should all just put a mask on, damn it. And I would agree with you if that's consistent, but it hasn't been. And so Dr. Fauci, among other people, needs to be leading that charge. They can use that power to do a lot of good if they're careful, or do a lot of damage if they're not. And I'll say that they've done a lot of damage because of the mixed message. And when there's mixed messages, you leave it to the devices of people and their own personal opinions about things, and that's where we run into the trouble. And this is why people challenge authority. And this is why people seemingly have this anti-science bias. This is why people are having trouble with not wearing a mask, because it doesn't seem like we have anything solid that tells people that they should. Most of us like to think of ourselves as rational agents who can make decisions and form beliefs that make sense, but the world is far too big and complex for us to have the time or the additional bandwidth to know about everything, so we have to pick and choose what we believe. The scientific name for this is called sampling, and it works well in a dynamic world where the approximate truth is usually good enough to make everyday decisions. We're also built to favor investigating the things we feel uncertain about. This tendency pushes us to expand and update our knowledge base. Once we feel like we know everything, we disengage and move on to the next thing. This prevents us from wasting time on what we already know, so now we can learn something new. But the problem arises when we believe that we know everything there is to know, but then we're actually wrong. When this happens, we are less open to challenging or changing our minds based on new information because we don't seek out new information, and we're more inclined to ignore it when we do encounter it. And this is where we are. There are people who think they know that they know that they know that you should absolutely wear a mask. There are people that they know that they know that they know that they think you should not wear a mask. And so if you have this like deep, I can't be shaken off of my belief system, then it's hard to make those people change. It's why I think we should all have an open mind, and we should all try to come to some conclusion that's actually based on something. And the problem is, most of the things that people believe are based on things that weren't true from the beginning, but they believe them anyway. Can people be taught to be more open-minded? It is possible. Beliefs are not stable. Finished things because we are stable finished things because we are constantly taking in new data and updating. It may seem disheartening that people shut down once they become certain, but I see hope in the fact that people are fundamentally social and they seek to engage with one another. People are sensitive to the beliefs of all those around them. When those beliefs change, people may reconsider their position. That's why talking about what is happening is important, and informed people who know the most should be talking the loudest. The problem is there's people who think they know the most, and they are talking very loud, but they don't know the most. And that's where it gets muddied. As for behavioral and cognitive scientists, we don't yet know if the tendency to hold on to a dubious belief can be trained out of people. It's something a lot of researchers are interested in right now. If people are aware of their fallibility, they could be taught to moderate their behavior accordingly. We're investigating the viability of that idea. We'll test it and see, because that's how science works. So unfortunately, we're living in the moment where we're having a living science experiment right now. And we're seeing the pushback from people that don't believe what they've heard is true from authorities that they don't believe. And see, here's the other thing. If you hear a statement from someone you already have problems with, are you going to be more apt to believe them or not believe them? It's obvious. You're not going to believe them. And vice versa. If you like someone and you hear them putting out a message of some sort, you're going to be more apt to believe them. And this is where I think the political angle comes into play. Well, this candidate says you should wear a mask. This candidate says you should not wear a mask. And so I like this candidate. I like that. And then the masks become a proxy for how you're voting for people. And it just becomes this, everybody just wishy-washy mishmashes it all together. And we reach these conclusions that may or may not be true. This is a mess, and I hope you're seeing that maybe some of us have fallen into the trap of thinking, well, people that don't wear a mask, they're just anti-science, challenging authority unnecessarily, they're conspiracy theorists, they're quacks. People that are wearing a mask, well, they believe in the virtues of science, and they think authority hung the moon. And so you got this clash between the two. And each other yelling at the other for their position is not going to solve this. We need to figure out, okay, if you wear a mask, why? Tell me what you base it on. And don't just say, well, it's the right thing to do. Okay, that's all well and good, but tell me why you think it's the right thing to do. And then if you don't wear a mask, tell them why. What is your reasoning? What's going on? Have the conversation, just like everything else, just like the race relations stuff. Just have the conversations and have them in an open forum. Be civil about it and let's have the conversation. Making a meme and throwing it out there ain't solving anything. Being sarcastic ain't solving anything. Being accusatory and assuming things about people like that lady did on Instagram with me. I literally gave no political view. I gave no position on what I thought about mask versus not mask. I gave nothing. And yet she jumped right to a conclusion of what she thought I did. She finally revealed, well, you speak Southern, and so you're obviously a Trump supporter, so you obviously don't wear a mask and don't agree with wearing a mask, so you obviously... You see how she jumped to conclusions based on what she wanted to see. And that's what happened to me, and it's happening to people on a daily basis. And that's wrong, guys. We need to be having a better conversation about this and not just jump to the conclusion about what people are doing. All right, let's see what you guys have to say. I'm going to go over here to Instagram first, then over to Facebook. And again, if you joined us late, unfortunately, my iPhone 10 decided to do this little line thing along the side, and it has me locked out of my phone. So I need to take it to the Apple Store. That's who I usually put the YouTube feed on. So maybe somebody that knows something about smartphones can tell me what in the world is that little line along the side, a little splotch at the bottom. I don't know what I did to it. I've had it for a little while. I got that iPhone 10 as soon as they came out, so a little bit old. So, all right, let's see what you guys have to say. Welcome in, welcome in. As always, go to jimmyrants.com. And you can check out the show there. Let me pull you a little closer so I can see your questions. Preach it, says Jacob. Thank you. Hockey says, I believe my state has required masks now. They're about to here in South Carolina as well. I know for the schools, assuming we open in the fall, we will all be wearing masks. It's going to be tough as a teacher, and I completely agree. Yeah, I don't know how as a teacher you have a connection with your students, because part of the connection you make with your students is articulating and being able to be heard. And so through a mask, it kind of muffles it. And then facial expression so that the kid feels like you love them. Yeah, it's going to be so tough on you teachers when you have to go back to school and you're wearing these things. Breastfeeding Keto Ireland says it's very hard on the elderly. I work with a lot of them, struggle to hear, so they usually lip read. And now they can't. Yes, that's another issue. That's for sure. Living Ketosis says civilized debates and logic are a rare trait these days. Sadly, it's one thing. I've done a lot of Jimmy rants lately about, hey, let's just get back to civil conversation. Why do we have to make everything a screaming match? But I guess some people like that. I, for one, don't. I, for one, like to say, okay, challenge me on my belief, but give me evidence. Don't call me fat. Don't call me whatever you want to call me. This lady on the Instagram comment, she also said, yeah, you're a nothing without the medical experts, and so you're spreading toxic information. I'm going, over a meme from The Princess Bride? I'm spreading toxic information? Like, what are you talking about? Shirley says they've been spitballing about everything since the beginning. In my opinion, I don't trust anything they're saying at this point. And you're not alone, Shirley. There's a lot of people that, because of the back and forth with all the messaging, they don't know what to believe. And so you have to take that into account if we're going to have this discussion about why people seemingly are going against science, why people are seemingly defying what to a lot of other people seems like common sense, to wear a mask to protect the public, and then they're challenging authority, and people don't understand that either. So hopefully people understand that there's people like you that have that for very good reasons. All right, thank you, Instagram. Let me pop over here to my Facebook page. Norma says, wear a mask when you go to the Apple Store, please. West Virginia is having a horrendous surge of coronavirus after several went to Myrtle and Daytona Beach. We were almost at no new cases. Well, again, Myrtle Beach and Daytona Beach are highly tourist areas, and there's probably little social distancing happening there, so I'm sure that contributed to that. Mitzi says the crazy is getting out of hand. Well, the crazy, Mitzi, was there all along. I've been talking to a few of my friends about this. Some work in the mental health, like therapists. And I said, you know what, people, I think we're right on the verge anyway, but between the lockdown and some of the loss of income because of COVID-19 and because of the race riots and relations stuff that's going on and wearing a mask, not wearing it's just become this mental health crisis. I've done some Jimmy rants on this lately, that I think we're going to see major mental health problems in many years to come. There's going to be a lot of PTSD from this whole 2020 experience. And so, but you're right, the crazy is out of hand. It's like that meme I made with the Princess Bride was meant to make people smile, and this lady went off on me like I was the worst human being in the world. I didn't take it personally, because it's like, at the end of the day, I realize people are on edge. But yeah, that was shocking, to say the least. I'm a nurse, and some days I wear a mask 6 to 7 hours a day. Maybe that's what's wrong with me. Not enough oxygen going to the brain, huh, Norma? Gary says you do a great job, Jimmy. Thank you for that. Helene says, I live in a mandatory mask state. Just wear the damn mask. Be creative. Well, again, if you tell someone just wear the damn mask, I think that's part of the challenge here, Helene, and I feel where you're going with that. But that's part of the challenge. Some people say, well, just wear the damn mask does not tell me why I need to wear it. And it almost feels like you must do it. Think about when you were a kid and when your mom and dad said, you must empty the dishwasher. Okay, well, that doesn't feel very good. Some people want to challenge that authority right away. But if you say, you know what? Empty the dishwasher and I'll go get you your favorite ice cream. Oh, I'll empty the dishwasher. So I think it's in the way you present it and the way you try to say, okay, here's a compelling reason why you should do this. That helps. And that's what we're talking about here today. All right, guys. Thank you here, Facebook. Let me see if there's any final thoughts. I miss my YouTubers today because they're not here. Over on Instagram, and I see none. So, guys, this is not going away. And I know you're observing this just like I am. You're seeing how people are reacting. You're seeing kind of the associations that are being put together, that wearing a mask is seen as virtuous, is seen as following the science, is seen as following the authority. And for some reason, you support Joe Biden if you wear a mask. And then the other side, you're not wearing a mask. You're seen as anti-science. You're seen as a conspiracy theorist kook. You're seen as a Trump supporter. It's just amazing how we're kind of making all these associations based on one behavioral thing, wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. And I'm saying, let's back up. Let's have conversations. Let's try to figure out, okay, if you believe not wearing a mask is a good idea, then ask people who wear a mask, why do you wear it? And have that conversation. Hear the explanation. Vice versa. You wear a mask, you see someone not wearing a mask, rather than shaming them for not wearing a mask, why don't you ask them, well, why don't you wear a mask? Do you have a reason why you don't wear a mask? And then have the conversation. Because I think if we come to this realization of why we're doing either one, then we can come to, okay, you're not wearing a mask because, well, let me explain this. Or you're wearing a mask because, let me explain this. And then you come to some kind of a conclusion. Why is this hard? Like, am I way off the beaten path here of thinking that we can come to some middle ground to understand each other's position, regardless of which side of mask wearing, not mask wearing that you're on? I think we can all be better for each other. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And as always, you can engage live in the content. You got to go follow me, though, over on Instagram. I'm at Living Low Carb Man, LivinLowCarbMan. Once you're there, engage live and enjoy the content. We go live at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. So check us out. We also simulcast live over on my Facebook page. So thank you guys for being here today as well. I usually go live on YouTube over here. But today I had a little weird accident with my iPhone 10. It's just not even trying to unlock for me. So I got to go get that checked out at the Apple Store. So there it is. So that's all the ways you watch live. You can also watch it on replay right here on IGTV. So be sure to watch it there. We do put all the past episodes up over on YouTube as well. So check it out. And finally, go to jimmyrants.com. You can see all the past episodes there. And if you like what you see here and enjoy the show, definitely click on the Patreon link, and any donation of any amount would be greatly appreciated. That's it for now, you guys. We'll be back again real soon with more Jimmy Rants. See ya. All right.